Hello, B-Day classes. This is Miss Swigert. I'll move myself over here for a minute. And today I am with you on video because I have an appointment I need to go to. So I'm sorry I'm not with you today, but hopefully this video will help you get done everything you need to get done today. So what you're doing today, here's your to-do list over here in yellow. You need to finish writing your oral presentation for your global issue research project. Then transfer that draft onto note cards so that you can easily go through and read your presentation out loud. I would practice it at least one time, reading it all the way through out loud. That might not be done in class. You might do that outside of class to a parent or a friend or something, or just alone in front of your mirror. But you want to make sure that it all flows and makes sense. Then the last thing you need to do is plan and create your visual board. So some of the stuff I went over in class on Tuesday, but I'm kind of going to reiterate it in case that you forgot something or for anyone who wasn't here on Tuesday. So we're going to talk about writing your oral presentation. We're going to talk about planning your visual. Here we go. Okay, so for preparing for your presentation, what is it going to look like on presentation day? On your presentation day, you're going to bring your trifold board to the library where you're going to set it up for your presentation. If you have my class later in the day, you can bring it there first thing in the morning and just store it there. And then when you get there for third, fourth hour, you can get it set up at the beginning of class. So you're going to have your oral presentation prepared on note cards. People have asked me if they can just memorize their speech. That's totally fine. The note cards are not something that's going to get turned in. I just highly suggest that you have something small. I don't want people with a bunch of paper trying to read through it. You also want to have practiced it so that you are not just directly reading from note cards when there's a guest judge coming to talk to you. So we're going to have several guest judges who are going to go from presentation to presentation. Each judge is going to have a stack of rubrics that they're going to use to grade your presentation. So when a guest judge approaches your presentation, you are going to introduce yourself, say, hello, my name is such and such. And you just want to make sure that you say your name clearly and loudly enough that they can hear you, so that they can write your name on their rubric. Then you're going to complete your presentation, and when concluded, the judge is totally allowed to ask you clarifying questions. So you want to just be prepared to talk about any of the sources you've used, any kind of research that you've done, and don't be offended or anything if people ask you questions. Oftentimes, teachers and people like this will ask you questions in order to get you more points. Maybe they missed something you said, or maybe you kind of skimmed over something, didn't say it very clearly. So they're hoping to get more information out of you. So they could be about your analysis. They could be about your research questions. They might just be genuine questions about your opinion or on your global issue. So just be prepared to talk about it. So that being said, you might end up giving your presentation several times to several different judges. And that's really a good thing for you because, say you mess up one time, you totally forget to talk about one text, or they ask you a question, you're not prepared for it. That gives you a chance to recalibrate between the time that judge leaves and the next judge comes to you. You're like, I really need to make sure I dropped that note card, or I totally forgot something. I need to make sure I do that next time. Okay, a pro tip: dress professionally. This is not required. You can dress however you want to dress, but like it or not, first impressions do go a long way, and looking professional could be a bonus to having a successful presentation. That went out of order. Okay, so I'm going to open this document in a minute, and we're going to talk about it in a minute, but you're going to use this document, which I'll show you where it's linked, to plan your presentation. If you were here on Tuesday, you should have already opened it and started typing into it. So again, at the top of the document, it has a model where I've written my whole presentation, like for my global issue. So you can use that if you're like get stuck and not sure what to do, go look how I did it, and that might help you. It also has like some sentence starters that I would use that will help you figure out how to do that. Again, you're going to type this. It's going to be like your draft. And then you're going to find a way to transfer that into note cards. So you could handwrite everything on note cards. You could do it as bullet points on note cards. Or you could maybe print it and glue it on note cards. Again, I just don't want people with a bunch of paper or like a piece of paper trying to read your whole presentation. I did plan this document outlining your analysis in the order of the rubric. So that's going to help to make sure that you are hitting all the criteria. And also it being in the same order is going to help the judges because they're going by like a check, kind of like a checklist to see if you're doing each piece. Pro tip, number your index cards so they don't get mixed up. That might seem like duh, but like if you don't do it, it's pretty easy to get those mixed up. It's kind of can be nerve-wracking sometimes speaking to someone you don't know or speaking kind of in a public forum. So it's easy to get flustered. So if you just have them in order, that's just a planning thing that can help you in the long run. Okay, so if you were here on Tuesday, I know all of this stuff has just been review. Again, this is going to be just a tiny bit more review. So you need to plan your presentation. All of your analysis charts, you should have 4, and you want to put them in this order. Nonfiction on top, then lit circle book, then non-literary text, and then literary text. That's the order that you talk about them in your presentation, so it's the order that you're going to write about them. After you have them in order, if you didn't do this on Tuesday, go ahead and do this. You want to look at each chart and determine what the best piece of evidence that you have found, the one that supports what you're saying the most, and your best commentary also. So like you want to put stars by each of those. So for each chart, you're picking your 2 strongest pieces of evidence with commentary. So put stars by each of those. You can pause me and go ahead and do that. Okay, so like I said before, I'm going to open the document now and you're going to see it. I'm going to show you how to open it. And you're going to type your draft into the blank chart below and use my stuff that's at the top as a model. So first I'm going to show you where to find this document. So from Canvas, from NYP English 2, if you go to our weekly schedule, you're going to find this week, which is December 8th through 12th. Then either on Tuesday or on Thursday, well, it looks like it's just on Tuesday and Wednesday, go to the oral presentation planning. So this is only click this if you weren't here on Tuesday or didn't open this on Tuesday. So this is going to make a copy of this document. So this document, like I said, at the top, it has, it's like a table. So it has on the left everything that you're supposed to do for each like kind of paragraph, each section of your speech. And then on the right, it has my model of what I did. And then at the bottom, there's a blank one where you can kind of look at the left and say, okay, what's your global issue? And then you're going to type on the right what you would say. So this is basically, it's like your script of what you're going to say for your oral presentation. Okay, so going back to my slides for a minute, if I can, where am I? Here we are. Okay, so for your introduction, you're going to go through these steps. What is your global issue? You're going to type, my global issue I researched is blank. If you haven't done that yet, go ahead and pause the video and do that. Then you're going to type, okay, so why does it matter? This is the point where you're introducing your nonfiction text, and it's the only point in your whole presentation when you're talking about your nonfiction text. Why does it matter is basically you're situating your global issue in the real world through your only nonfiction text, the one that is based in the real world. So it says, briefly introduce evidence from your nonfiction text to support your reasoning. This is what I want you to do. First, give the title, author, and genre of your nonfiction text. Then, explain the assertion that the author is making about the global issue. And then, choose 1 to 2 pieces of evidence and commentary from your nonfiction analysis chart that supports why is this global issue important. So I know that's a lot, so pause me if you need to. Go look at my example, and you're going to use your analysis chart from your nonfiction text to fill this part in. So pause me and come back. Okay, so at this point, you should have all of the introduction part written. So looking back at mine, I have my global issue that I researched is propaganda and misinformation for the control of the populace. The nonfiction article I found in my research, and then I have the title and the author, and then this is my assertion. Then I have some evidence in the article, the author's right, and then this is my evidence, and then this part is my commentary. Then I decided to use the second piece of evidence because it seemed really important to me. So I have a second piece of evidence that goes all the way down here, and a second piece of commentary. Again, if you only want to use one piece of evidence, that's totally fine. You only need one piece of evidence for your nonfiction text. Okay, the next piece you do in your introduction is you write a thesis statement. Your thesis statement, I'll move myself again because I'm in the way, is you're going to say, so you're saying how is it presented through all of your texts with authorial choices and textual features. So you're basically saying all of the text that you read, so now you're listing just 3 because you've already talked about your nonfiction text, and then you want to name the technique that you're going to talk about from the evidence that you chose. So I would look back at all of your analysis charts that you already starred, which one's which, and decide which ones you're going to talk about. So a little weird thing here is that for your non-literary text, you only need to talk about one piece of evidence. So you're kind of going to go back, and the 2 that you starred, you're going to decide the number 1 that you love, that you think this is the best piece of evidence you want to talk about. If you wanted to talk about more than one, you're welcome to, but I would only talk about more than one if you're just like really passionate and really have a lot to say about it. Otherwise, it's just going to make your speech longer. It doesn't really add anything to it. Now, the other thing that's tricky here is for between your lit circle novel and your literary text. For one of those, you need to talk about 2 pieces of evidence. The other one, you can just talk about 1. So you need to decide kind of which one you want to talk about 2 or which one you want to talk about 1. Again, here, you could talk about 2 with both of them, but again, I would only really do that if you had a lot to say about it, if you were really passionate, if you felt like both pieces of evidence on both texts were just so strong and so powerful. So, kind of have to figure that part out. And then you're going to write in your introduction, through my research, I found that the problem of, you're going to put your global issue, is presented across many texts, including in title of your Lit Circle book, through the use of Technique 1 and maybe Technique 2. Then the title of your non-literary text through Technique 1. And in literary text title number 2 through Technique 1 and maybe Technique 2. So looking back at my chart, what I made, I have, through my research, I found that the problem of propaganda and misinformation is presented across many texts, including the young adult novel, The Hunger Games, through the use of juxtaposition and illusion, Susan Jarvis's poem, Inklings, through personification and simple diction. See, I listed 2 things there. I only needed maybe to do 1 because I talked about 2 things in The Hunger Games. So It's up to you. And in Mark Mitchell's painting, Misinformation Through Symbolism and Details. Again, I only need to do one there. I'm talking about two. So keep that in mind. So at that point, I would go ahead and pause the video and try and write that thesis statement, and then come back when you're done with your thesis statement. Okay, now I would take your nonfiction text analysis chart and just move it to the back of that stack, and you should have your lit circle analysis chart in front of you now. Because the next kind of like paragraph, the next section of your text that you're working on is literary work number 1, which is your lit circle book. Again, here you have already, if you have that analysis chart fully filled out and you have great commentary written on it, you have already done most of this work. You're really just kind of like putting stuff together at this point. So what you do first, because we're thinking about you're going to be talking about this book to someone who you don't know if they've read it or not, is you want to introduce the text and the author and briefly summarize the book. I'm talking maybe 1 or 2 sentences, not a huge summary here. You just want to familiarize your audience with it so that they know what you're talking about. So you would say, my example is Suzanne Collins' young adult novel, The Hunger Games, tells the story of Katniss, blah, 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 blah. Right after that, you're going to, you're going to choose the either 1 or 2 pieces of evidence that you starred on your chart and introduce your evidence and then type your commentary. Here you just want to make sure that the commentary is doing both of these things, that it is both explaining what are the effects on the reader of whatever that authorial choice is that you name, and then how does it further illuminate the global issue or comment on the global issue? How is it about the global issue that you're talking about? So if you want to go look at my example of that, I would just scroll back up to the top, and I did color code it a little bit for you. So this whole part that's black is kind of just like my introduction to my quote. The red part is my quote. I did put in blue the choice, the authorial choice or technique that I'm talking about. And then green is the effect on the audience. And purple is, how it is illuminating the global issue. So that being said, you don't have to color code it or anything. I wanted to show you how it's doing those different things. I know this looks like a lot of text. Yours might not be this long, and that's okay. But I'm just talking about one authorial choice here. So I've got the 1 piece of evidence, the 1 commentary. So as you're typing your commentary from your chart, you want to make sure it's doing those things. And if it's not doing both those things, you'll want to revise it in some way. Okay, so at this point, I want you to pause the video and go do that work. You can rewind if you forgot something. Then come back when you're ready for the next section of text. Okay, so again, here you're basically doing the same thing you just did, but you're going to the next chart, your non-literary work. So remember, this one is the one that was visual probably in some way. So because of that, whatever you have on your visual board hopefully has some kind of visual of this text. So say it's a political cartoon or a painting or something like that. You've got it printed on your board. Because of that, you don't really need to summarize the text because the person judging you will be able to see it. At this point in my speech, I would probably say I would introduce the text and the author and then point to what was on my board so that they had a chance to see it and they knew what I was talking about. Then you're going to choose your number 1 authorial choice that you starred on your paper. And you're going to it might not be a quotation because it's a visual text, but you're going to explain the evidence and then read your commentary as well. And again, you want to make sure your commentary is doing both of those things, that it's talking about the effects on the reader and also how is it illuminating the global issue. Okay, so go ahead and pause and do that part now. We're in our final kind of like body paragraph of this oral presentation. Here's where you're talking about your second literary text. The last time we went to the library, the last literary text you have. So turn to that text analysis chart. Now, it's basically, depending on the text, you will again want to determine if you want to summarize the work, like is it a short story, or if it's something really, really short, like a short poem, you could maybe just read it and have it actually printed on your visual board. Then, once again, you're going to look at that chart. You're going to choose either one or two authorial choices, evidences, and you're going to type those into your thing. So let's look at my example really quickly. Looking at literary work number 2, see I have 2 pieces here. So I have introduce text and author, depending on the length, read or summarize the work. My poem's so short, I would probably just read it out loud. So I would have it printed on my board and then read it out loud to them. So I just would say, this is Susan Jarvis Bryant's poem, Inklings, and then I'd read it. And then I would talk about, I would probably write a better introduction to this quote, and then talk about this quote, and then this is my commentary. And then again, I would probably write a better introduction to this quote, and then that's my second quote, and that's my commentary. And again, I did color code those for you. So if you haven't done that yet, go ahead and pause the video and work on literary work number 2. The last part for your oral presentation is you are writing a conclusion. So the 2 things you need to do in your conclusion is propose possible solutions, and you want to think about different stakeholders or different parties in this global issue. So how could this issue be addressed by maybe like politicians or people like us? In my example, which is misinformation and propaganda, I also talk about how could tech companies do something, because I feel like so much misinformation is spread on social media. How can the tech companies like do a better job of policing that or doing something around that? Then so that's one thing. What can we do about it? You can get this, a lot of my information came from my original nonfiction source, which talked about what we can do. It had a call to action in it. You could also kind of like Google around, see if you can find a news article that has some information here. Or it can just be from what you think about how this can be solved. Then the second thing you're going to do in your conclusion is just have a final, genuine reflection about this process or about your research. So it could be something that you discovered in your research, something you discovered in just the process of research. I do want it to be a genuine reflection. This is something that AI cannot write for you. You need it to definitely be something that you have felt throughout the process. So you can go ahead and pause and do that. And then when you're done, you have written your whole oral presentation. So the last thing you need to do is transfer it into some note cards and then practice it. And again, I know that this is kind of a lot of writing, but you have already done most of the writing. You're just kind of like putting all of this work that you've done together into one kind of synthesis thing. Okay, now I'm going to talk about your visual a bit. Again, I did talk about some of this on Tuesday, but I just want to reiterate, and then there's a little bit of new content here. So this chart here at the top, this is all the rubric says about your visual. So this would be bare bones, the minimum what you need to do. It needs to have everything on a trifold board. It needs to have a title. It needs to have an acknowledgement, so like something that is talking about or showing all of the texts in some way. So you should have 4 texts. There needs to be some kind of acknowledgement. This does not need to be bibliographical information. It could just be like a picture of the book cover. And then it needs to have visual elements and not just text. It also says consider, again, significant passages. Here I would think about the evidences that you're going to talk about. I might have blown up a little bit bigger and pasted on so that when you get to that point, that point in your oral presentation, you can point to it and your audience can read along with you as you're reading. Authorial choices discussed. Again, that's just like a visual cue. You can say, I'm going to talk about the metaphor used in this passage. Then, again, I would just say in visual elements, you want things to be as visual as possible. So think pictures, graphs, data, etc. Anything that's going to help represent the scope of your global issue. The main thing I want to stress here is that I'm looking for your own creativity. So I want you to think about your visual as an aid to help your audience understand what you're trying to get across from your oral presentation. The oral presentation is like the main course, and the visual is just to kind of help and also have something to look at other than just staring at you while you're reading your presentation. The main thing I would do is stay away from too much text. I really, really do not want you to paste your rhetorical précis or your annotated bibliography onto a board. Think about it from an audience's point of view. If there's a bunch of text on a screen or on a board while someone's talking, it's really hard for them to look at both things at once or pay attention to both things at once. You want them to be paying attention to what you're saying. And so I would only put text on the board that you are going to refer to, and they can refer to it, like read along while you're reading it out loud. Okay, so I would have maybe a few key words, like the techniques that you're talking about, and maybe the evidence that you're using. So what I want you to be thinking about is, how can I get my ideas across in an interesting visual way that enhances my oral presentation without being distracting to my audience? The items that you submitted to the Global Dropbox, I had them printed and I left them with the substitute. So they are organized by class period. You can get them from them. This is kind of my last piece about the visual board. Before you start gluing things to your board, I want you to kind of plan out how it's going to look. So you might kind of just like draw a little diagram or just like lay it out and kind of place things on it. Things that you might think about the order that you're talking about things in. So I know like the first thing I'm going to talk about is my nonfiction text. So maybe that should go in the middle, or maybe it should go on the far left. Maybe, if you want to go this way, this way, this way. So it's going to go nonfiction text, then lit circle book, then non-literary text, then second literary text. So if you want to do it in order some way, you could do it like that. Also, I would think about balancing visual elements with text. So don't have all of your visuals on one side and all of the text on the other. You want to balance it out just so it looks nice. And also just think about using coordinating colors, using the same kind of font, stuff like that is going to help a lot. Okay, sorry about that. I got interrupted for a second. So I know this is a long video. I hope that it's been helpful. I just wanted to come back to the to-do list for today so you know anything that you need to get finished up. You need to finish writing your oral presentation, transfer that presentation to note cards, practice your oral presentation, and then plan and create your visual board. If you have any questions, you can email me, or I will be here on Friday as well. You can come talk to me. I hope that you have everything together and you're ready for everything that's coming. And I know that your presentations are going to be great. I'm looking forward to it. Bye.